Okay, so we're beginning of Parshas Vayigash. We are up to Perek Mem Dalid Pasuk Chof. And just to recap what we discussed last week, which will be relevant to today, we discussed that Yosef ends his offer to the brothers with an offer of Shalom. Alu l'Shalom el avichem. He says, my stance with you is a stance of Shalom. I have a problem with the one of you that stole the Gavia, and he has to remain here and be Me'eved, but the rest of you earn Shalom. So Yehuda then says, asks for permission to be Medaber Davar, Yidaber no Avdecha Davar, which means that if you're offering Shalom, then Yehuda is saying, I'm going to craft a narrative that is supportive of Shalom. And that's why in Yehuda's retelling of the history of the interactions of the brothers and Yosef, there are inaccuracies, things that didn't happen. And that's because of the principle that we can be mishana, we can change things with shalom. And what that means here in this story is that Yosef is telling them, look, we've got off to a rocky start. I once had issues with you being meraglim, but now I'm fine with you. Now our relationship is a relationship of shalom, but he has to pay for the gavia, so he has to stay. And what Yehuda is saying is that if our relationship is a relationship of shalom and you're deleting, you want to ignore those aspects of our relationship which suggest the opposite of shalom, then we have to view our relationship as if certain things are true, as if the reason why Binyamin is here is not because you accused us of being spies and you need to keep Binyamin as verification, but rather you took an interest in our family and you said, I would like to meet Binyamin. Since you want to have a stance of shalom, so that's how we have to view things, and then it follows then that you should release him and keep me in his stead, which is his ultimate punchline, his ultimate argument. And furthermore, we said this references the fact that Yosef is offering shalom takes us back to the point in the narrative where Yosef was very solicitous of their shalom, and that's in Parshas Miketz Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Chav Zayin, when they ate together, and Vayish Allahem l'Shalom, and he said, Hashalom avichem hazakein, is he still alive? And they said, yes, Shalom, Udenu Chai. Okay, so there's a point in the story when they got over that initial tension about them being spies, and everyone's very happy together, and Yosef says, that's where I consider our relationship to have begun. I'd only have a problem with the fact that someone stole the Gavia. So Yehuda is saying, well, if that's where our relationship begun, well, how did we get there? Why are we having a party together? Oh, because it's as if, Ki'ilu, you had originally taken an interest in Binyamin and asked about our family and asked us to be Binyamin. So it's presenting a picture that's consistent with the stance of Shalom. And the deeper idea over here is that we're going back to the beginning of Vayeshev, where Yosef was given a mission, Lech narei shloim achecha v'shloim hatzoin. While about the brothers, it says, V'lo yochelu daberei l'shalom. So there's this, the heart of the tension between Yosef and the brothers revolves around speaking shalom. And the reason why that's at the heart of the tension is because shalom, the word shalom, is considered the word of the Nevi'im, around which all other words are woven. And what that means is that the concept of shalom is the key concept that the Navi has to know and understand in order to speak the word of Hashem, all the other words of Hashem that are woven and integrated around the idea called shalom. Okay, so the argument between the Yosef and the brothers, which essentially is an argument about the word of Hashem. The brothers seek das Hashem, and Yosef knows that we have to go into hiding, or that's what he maintains rather, that we have to experience and train in lack of das Hashem, lack of Devar Hashem. So that revolves around the word Shalom, which is the Davar of Hashem, it's the word of the Nevi'im. And the whole story then is a search for How can they retrieve the shalom that was lost due to their original tension? Okay, so that's why we have this offer of shalom at the end of Mika. It's climactic offer of shalom, and beginning of Yigash begins with Yidaber Dover, because shalom is the Dover that we've been looking for since the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, when it says V'aviv Shamar es HaDover. Okay, so now that's a brief recap of last week's shir. Let's read the pasuk inside. Pasuk Chaf. V'nomer al Adoni yesh lanu av zakein v'yeled zukunim katon v'achiv meis v'yivasehu levadoi le'imoi v'aviv ahivai. So in this pasuk there are two things that are different from the narrative originally, which is that they said, Yehuda said, that we had originally told you that we have a father who's elderly. But they did not tell him that, or it's not described as such in the original telling of the narrative. In Perek Mem Beis Pasuk Yud Gimel, they said we are 12 people, a son of one Ish. They didn't say he's old. But it's part of the Shalom argument, because if you're with Shalom, if you have a status of Shalom with us, then you should have pity on him and recognize that he's old and vulnerable and frail. And similarly, taking us back to the Shalom stance that Yosef had towards the brothers, that is to say, as I mentioned earlier, when they were having their meal together and Yosef was cared very much about their family. So there it says again, Gimel Pasuk of Zayin, Vaish Allahem Shalom V'yim Hashalom Avichem Hazakein. Your elderly father. Now they had not offered that he's elderly, but when Yosef cares about his Shalom, he mentions that he's elderly. And by the way, notice that, and this, I don't know if I noticed this when we learned that pasuk then, but a pasuk of Zayin, he says, "Shalom avichem hazakein asher amartem," that you said, and that's so significant because they actually did not say that their father was elderly. And not only that, it's even significant because why is he mentioning? Why does he say avichem hazakein asher amartem when we actually, the fact that they have a father, fine. Why is he saying asher amartem and they didn't say that they have an elderly father? But what's happening there, I think, is the same game that's happening there. That once we talk a shalom talk, we become very solicitous and we become very caring and we become aware of things that we may or may not have evidence for. So, in other words, basically, in simple pshat, when you are putting yourself in a position of seeking someone shalom, then you might assume that they're elderly and require special care because you're trying to stress your friendliness. And indeed, Yosef, when he talks about shalom, he assumes a fact that they didn't say, which is that their father's elderly. And Yehuda, similarly in the context of shalom, presents as if they had indeed said that, although we don't find that they did. Now, I just want to comment, one Nakud is interesting. The Ibn Ezra, on this pasuk, in the beginning of Yigash, where it says, we have an elderly father. So, he says that, why are they saying elderly father? Because he doesn't necessarily have to be elderly. He says the oldest one of the brothers, I think he says, was 45, so the father didn't necessarily have to be an older man yet. That's what his cheshbon is. Now, but nonetheless he was. So that's why they make that point. So why doesn't he point this out in Miketz? Avichem hazakein. And more than that, if it's true that their father's not necessarily old, then how does Yosef know it? But that I've been saying is that in Chanam he doesn't know it. I mean, obviously he really does because he's really Yosef, but in his disguise he doesn't know it. But since he's taking an interest of Shalom, he assumes that their father is vulnerable and needy. Okay. Next, Yeled Zikunim, of course, follows from the fact that they're saying the father's a Zaken, and then the Yel is Yel Zekunim, and this takes us back to the beginning of Vayeshev, where Yosef is a Ben Zekunim. So, obviously we're getting back to that tension, and that do they care about their father's Ben Zekunim or not? The next thing in this pasuk, which is not accurate, is that it says V'achiv Meis. Now this is actually inaccurate, not only in terms of retelling the narrative, because the first time they said it, they said Einenu. They said he's missing, Echad Einenu, which is accurate. He's missing, but here they say he's dead, and he's actually not dead. But why are they mentioning that he's dead? Because again, he's trying to craft a narrative where you have to be very caring and careful about the welfare of Binyamin, because his brother is dead and he's the only one left. So in crafting a narrative where, look, if you care so much about Shalom, then I'm going to overstress certain aspects to make sure that we maintain this Shalom el Avichem, and my father couldn't suffer greatly from this. Why? Not because his brother is missing and might be dead. Say it that way, and then Yosef will say, that is to say, Yosef in disguise will say, well, maybe he's not dead, maybe he'll come back. You have to stress the fact that the possibility that the brother's dead, as if it's absolute, so that in order to maintain Shalom, by not harming Yaakov. So what we have over here is this this theme, and which is that Yehuda creates a new reality, new words, because of Shalom. Okay, and that's like a basic approach here. I think we mentioned this, that the whole beginning of Vigash, we have this long impassioned narrative, and what's the pasuk doing? What actually it's doing is that it's retelling the story in Yehuda's words in ways that are markedly different than what happened. And that's exactly the whole point, because that's exactly the point. The details are less significant than the fact that there's a retelling that's not accurate, which follows on the heels of Shalom. So this tells us something about the nature of Shalom and the nature of words when there's a Shalom consideration. Okay? And we'll explore this a little more soon, but let's read the next two psukim. Here they claim that this, as we mentioned, is a novelty. This vasima eni olav, which means I'm interested in him, or I'll take care of him. This we discussed at length last week. But the fact, was there a conversation where they said the next pasuk? When did that happen? If you look back, they never told him that. But this may have happened. So again, this could be something that they're adding Shalom to present it in a certain way. But there is a way to read into the narrative that this occurred, and this is Perek Mem Beis, Pasuk Tezayin, and Yud Zayin, a very strange pasuk, we spoke about this then, which is in Pasuk Tezayin, he tells them, look, your little brother has to come. And one of you should go home to bring back your brother while you guys are locked up to be tested. And the next pasuk says that Yosef locked all of them up for 3 days. So what's going on over here? First he says, one of you go home and the rest of you get locked up. And then the next pasuk says he locked them all up. So it suggests that they refused. They didn't take his offer. He made an offer, which is one of you go and the rest of you stay under arrest, and nothing happened, so he locks them all up, and that's because they did not accept this. Well, why didn't they accept this? So here the narrative is filling in and saying they said back to him, no, we can't do that. And then he said back to them, you said back to us, no, nonetheless, I insist. Okay, so that may have happened. Of course, it's stressing a certain point for the purposes of the Yudah's argument, but this may not be an embellishment. Okay, so let's talk about this point about the lies that are happening here, the untruths. They said an untruth that their brother's dead. And this suggests to me that, famous question that when Yosef reveals who he is, he says, in Perek Hey Pasuk Gimel, Ha'od Avichai, is my father still alive? And everyone wants to know, what do you mean? Of course his father's still alive. They've been talking about the father the whole time. The answer is very simple. They said he's dead and he's alive. So maybe when they said their father's alive, maybe the father's not alive. And not only that, when did they say this point? When is this point about the father still being alive? Go back to Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Chav Zayin. Vayesh Alahem l'sholom vayom ha'sholom avich mazaken Hashem atam ha'oidenu choy vayom sholom la'avduch avinu oidenu choy. So the fact that Yaakov is still alive was asserted in the context of Shalom. In that same context of Shalom, as we said at the end of Mika, it says Yosef is telling them, we're good together like we were good at the party last night. Started at day, actually, started in the afternoon, but we're still good. We're still in a Shalom situation. And in that Shalom situation, Yehuda approaches and said, if we're in Shalom, I want to tell you things the way I want to look at them, which is that my brother is dead, and therefore the little one is really important, etc. Well, that wasn't true, but it's a Shalom move, so that makes Yosef wonder whether the Oidenu Chai is a Shalom move. Very simple. And there's so many psukim, but it's interesting to think about the fact that when Yosef reveals himself to them and says, I'm Yosef, my father's still alive, this is happening the next day. He has this party with them, Batzaharayim. They get drunk. In the morning, they're out. Daybreak, they hit the road. And then they didn't even go far. He calls them back in. And he's basically repeating the question that he started when he met them the first. He met them at the beginning of the party. He said, that's what he's really concerned about. And turns out Yehuda comes to feed him a pack of lies on the principle of Shalom. So now Yosef says, wait a second. What other lies were said in the name of Shalom? The first question I asked you in the context of Shalom, which is Ha'idenu Chai. I want to ask you that same question again, because now I see that Yehuda's davar, Aidaber davar, gives him a license for to be Meshane Pnei Shalom. Okay? By the way, just this maybe is related, maybe not, but let me just mention it. Yehuda started off and said, Al Yicha Abcha. And Yosef, when he revealed himself to them, he says, Al Yicha Beinechem. So I'm not sure, maybe related, whatever. We'll get to that later. Okay, so there's a bunch of lies going on. And another thing that's happening, another lie that's happening, is about whether Yosef is alive. Because when they come back to Yaakov and tell him that Oid Yosef Chai, he doesn't believe that, right? So just like Yosef questioned whether Loihemin, just like Yosef questioned Oidenu Chai, and he wants to ask the same question again because he's getting suspicious because he realizes that Shalom changes everything. So to the other question about who's alive and who's dead, whether Yosef is still alive, is also suspected and doubted, and Yaakov doesn't believe them. So I think there's a theme going on over here, which is that speaking Shalom sometimes involves lies, and all of a sudden nobody knows what's true anymore. And this takes us back to the beginning of Vayeshev, because again going back to the beginning of Vayeshev, because what happened over there? There the pasuk says, "Lo yochlu daber l'shalom." The brothers could not speak Shalom. And there, famous Rashi says from Chazal that the pasuk is making a point that not only did they not have Shalom in their hearts, but they couldn't even speak Shalom. You would think that even if they don't have Shalom in their hearts, let them speak Shalom, let them be duplicitous, let them say Shalom while thinking Sinah or Melchama. And the pasuk is making the point that they weren't capable of that kind of deception. So here, where Yehuda finally speaks up a davar at the invitation of Yosef saying Alula Shalom, his davar is full of deception. So they graduated, maybe, or maybe not, I don't know. Originally they couldn't speak Shalom. Now he's speaking Shalom, but it's full of lies, and therefore Yosef starts suspecting things, doesn't believe them about what they said, and Yaakov doesn't believe them either. Now I want to take you to Tehillim, and for now, so we're done for the psukim in Vayigash. I want to take you to Tehillim, to some really interesting things, where there's this treatment of the issue of words of Shalom, and how that involves can sometimes involve deceit, lashon ramia, and sfas sheker, and the problems of that. So again, in other words, basically we're sort of pointing to a problem over here, which is that if you want a davar of shalom, then it's sometimes not going to be the best davar, right? So it's like you could have shalom or you could have words, but you can't have both almost, because and that's a problem, because remember the ikr word is shalom of shalom as a davar. We want the word of shalom in truth. Emes u'mishpat shalom. Think about shalom be'emes. It's a little bit of a contradiction. Emes ve'shalom ahavu. The point is it's a little bit of a contradiction, but you really want the davar of shalom. If the word of the Navi is shalom, that is considered the main word of the Navi, then obviously you want the emes v'tzedek. You want it to be true. But there's a problem here, because often you have people spout the word shalom with ramia, as Yehuda was essentially doing here. And this is something I want to maintain, that Tehillim Kufchaf, along with Tehillim Kufchaf Zayin, are dealing with this issue of shalom and its associated ramia or sheker, and are alluding to the story of Yosef and his brothers. Okay, so take a look at Mizmor Kufchaf. And I want to point out something. So in Mizmor Kufchaf, it talks about the sfas sheker and lashon ramia, treachery, deception, and lies, and compares those to sharpened arrows of a gibar, chitza gibar shnunim, sharpened arrows of a gibar, and gachle resamim. Gachle resamim is a type of cold. Chazal say that it could be hot on the inside, but it's not detectable from the outside. So it's a very dangerous weapon to use. This lashon ramia, very dangerous because the person who's handling the coals doesn't realize that they're hot. An important point I'm making there, and we'll get to what that means soon. And then the Mizmor ends with the fact that I dwelt with the hater of peace, and I speak peace. I say peace, and when I speak, they say war. Okay? Fine. Now, contrast this to Mizmor Kufchaf Zayin. There it talks about how the Bnei HaNeurim youths are like chitzim biad gibar. So in other words, having strapping young men in your army is like it's like a strong person having arrows. Asher hagever ashamile asash pasav. Unfortunately, is the person who fills his quiver with these arrows. In other words, the more young men you have in your family and in your army, the better. Lo yevoishu ki yudabrus even bashar, and then they're not embarrassed when they speak with the enemy in the gate. So now, notice in Kufchaf we have speaking with the enemy, saying shalom, but when I speak, they say war. And that's a deception, that's a lashon ramia, which are like chitze gibar shenunim. And here also in Kufchaf we have speaking with the enemy. And here we have chitze biad, again the chitze biad gibar, but not shenunim. So what I think that means is, without going into the arichos, is that chitze gibar shnunim are, as I mentioned, dangerous weapons. In other words, if you have chitze gibar, if you have arrows, so as it says in Kufchaf, you want to fill your quiver with your arrows. Awesome, the more arrows the better. But there's a certain kind of arrow that is not so, you can't have too many of them, or maybe you can't even have one, which is chitze gibar shnunim, the sharpened ones, meaning extra sharp arrows are dangerous to handle even if you're wielding the weapon, like the gachle resamim. So what Kufchaf is saying is that the lashon ramia, the treacherous tongue, is dangerous because it ends up harming even the person who's wielding it. So you might think you could use the sfas sheker lashon ramia against your enemies. What Kufchaf is saying is that it's not worthwhile to engage in deception because it will come back to hurt you who are engaging with. So in it. Just like it might be dangerous to use arrows that are too sharp because slightest touch and you can get cut. And it's dangerous to use coals that are hot inside of coal and not hot on the outside because you might forget that they're hot and end up harming yourself. Okay, so now that's a contrast between Kufchaf and Kufchaf Zayin. If you want to speak with the enemies, have a lot of strong young men, and then you could be open, nothing to hide. Lo yevoshu gedabra bashar. You can call it as it is. You don't have to be deceptive. Fine. Now, Kufchaf Vav, Shir Ma'as B'Shuv Hashem Sivas Tzion. We spoke about the beginning of Vayeshev. This corresponds to Yosef. There we have dreams, Hayinu Kecholmim, dreams. And we also have the only other place in Tanakh where we have Alumoisav, bundles of wheat. Okay. And it's about bread, right? It's about grain. Okay. Fine. And there's something about dreams there. Yosef had his dream. And in Kuf Chav Zayin, also Kuf Chav Zayin advocates for sleep. It says, don't eat the bread of atzabim. Don't wake up early and stay up late and eat the bread of affliction, like be'itzavan teichalena, right? You have to work hard for your parnasa. Not necessary, says Kuf Chav Zayin. If Hashem loves you, you can sleep late and everything's going to be fine. And this Kuf Chav Zayin is, so it's advocating for sleep. And Kuf Chav Vav talks about the dreamers. And this Kuf Chav Zayin, this theme that in order to get your bread, you don't have to work hard, this is a Yosef idea, where it says in Mishlei Perek Yud, this is briefly, I'll just mention this, in Mishlei Perek Yud, Pasuk Chav Beis, Birkas Hashem hita asher v'lo Yosef etzev imo. The blessing of Hashem makes wealth without any etzev. So, and that's referring to Yosef. Look in Perek Yud and Mishlei, talks about the foolish son who's Moitzi Diba. So that's Yosef starts off as a fool, and he has to become a chacham when he in the court of Pare, till he's worthy of being a king. And there it says that the blessing of Hashem makes a person wealth and does not involve any etziv. So that says, referencing by Birchas Hashem b'beis hamitzri b'chol hashalom b'bayis v'asodom. When Yosef was in the house of Mitzri, he had the Birchas Hashem, and the Birchas Hashem means you don't have to work hard. So Yosef achieved success without hard work, and that's associated with sleeping. And a Kuf Chav Vav, which is about dreams and alumis, also referring to Yosef, the dream point. Okay. By the way, this point about Kuf Chav Zayin says, let's sleep, it's okay to sleep, Hashem will take care of you, is contrast with a different Mahalach, also says in Mishlei, elsewhere in Mishlei, that if you want to have bread, you should not go to sleep. You should be industrious. And it actually conflicts even within the set of the Shir HaMalos, because in Kuf Lamed Beis, David makes a neder not to go to sleep till he builds the base of Hashem. So David makes a neder not to go to sleep until he builds the base of Hashem. I'm not going to sleep. Shloima, Kuf Chav Zayin, Shir HaMalos Shloima, starts off, if Hashem won't build a house, it doesn't matter who does. Shav Amlu Baina Boys, so don't worry about it. Don't be so excited about building a house. And it's okay to sleep late. Well, of course, famously, Shlomo Melech slept late after the house was built. And here he's arguing, as it were, with David, who says, I'm not going to go to sleep until I build a house. And he's saying, it's not you, it's Hashem. It's okay to sleep. So there's a machloikis about sleeping or staying up, which, remember, brings us to machloikis Yosef and the brothers. The brothers say we have to stay up. We have to have Das Hashem when we're awake. And Yosef says, I'll do dreams, which is something that happens when I'm asleep, which is associated with not having Das Hashem. And that takes us back to the dream of Yaakov, the Shorish HaMachlekas. Okay? Now, so what I established so far, what I'm trying to do over here, is show you that Kuf Chav Zayin is corresponding to Yosef, like Kuf Chav Vav, because Kuf Chav Vav is about the sleeping and the bundles of wheat, and Kuf Chav Zayin is about also sleeping. And Kuf Chav Zayin says that, and Kuf Chav Zayin corresponds to Kuf Chav, which is about the people who hate Shalom, and when you speak Shalom, they have war. Now, hating Shalom, that brings us back to the beginning of Vayeshev, where Yosef has one mission, which is Shloim Achecha Shloim Hatzayin. And the brothers hated him by Yisnu Oisei, so he couldn't speak to them. Now, what happens in the beginning of Vayeshev is that Lo Yochlu Daber L'Shalom, right? They didn't speak Shalom with Ramiyah, okay? So they waged war against him, but at least they didn't speak Shalom and trick him. So the Tefillah Kuf Chav is to avoid this Vashek Lashon Ramiyah, and that we have in the beginning of Vayeshev that they weren't treacherous and deceptive. Okay. Now I want to just read Kuf Chav Zayin. The two Chitzei Gibor. So the Chitzei Gibor and Kuf Chav Zayin are the sons, the Bnei HaNeurim, the young children. So I want to say the young child is Yosef, and in our Pasha Binyamin. And there it says, Asher Hagiv Hashem Milas Ashpasim Hem. So the contrast is like this. There are two kinds of Chitzei Gibor. It's Chitzei Gibor Shnunim, which is the Lashon Ramiyah. And then there's the good Chitzei Gibor, the one that you want to have a lot of, and those are the young men. So I would read that as corresponding to Yosef and the brothers, and I'll show you soon. There's other support for that in the Shir HaMalos. that Yosef is the good chitzei gibor, that you want more of them. Asher yagiv Hashem milei as hashpasei mehem, lo yevoishu ki dabros oivim bashora, the more the better. And that's like the blessing to the children of Yosef is Ariyeh Maloi Hagoyim. And so milei as hashpasei mehem. And the chitzei gibor that you don't want are the ones that are deceptive. So, in other words, and remember, this is all about shalom, right? Because what's the point of having weapons? Is for peace. Ani shalom, and lo you have to deal with your enemy. You want this shalom al Yisrael. That's the next kuf chav ches. We'll get to that soon. Kuf chav ches. The next where they talks about shalom al Yisrael. But that's what we're looking for, shalom al Yisrael. And how do you achieve shalom al Yisrael? So you might think you could achieve it with a sfas shak and lashon ramiyah. That's associated with the not good sons of Yaakov in our story. Because in Yehuda, what the best Yehuda does is argue for Shalom in Parashat Vigash in a manner of deception. So even though they started off with Lo Yachlu David Shalom, eventually they became deceptive. The one that does achieve Shalom is the other protagonist of the story, which is Yosef and maybe Binyamin, and those are the Chitzei Gibor, Chitzim Biyad Gibor, that you want more of them. Okay, so it's a contrast, so it's a medrash, as it were, Kuf Chav and Kuf Chav Zayin, and Kuf Chav Chav, Kuf Chav Ches, we'll talk about Kuf Ches in a moment, is a medrash about Yosef, the story of Yosef and the brothers, and the various approaches to Shalom. Okay, so let's talk about that pasuk in the end of Kuf Chav Zayin, which says, Lo yevoishu ki yidabru oivim bashar. They're not embarrassed when you speak to the enemy. So now let's talk about this not being embarrassed. Turn to Yeshaya Perek Chav Tes. Something a parak we've been looking towards often in these in Miketz. Parak of Tes pasuk Chav Gimel Chav Beis Loy ato yevosh Yaakov v'loy ato panav v'chavaru. Now Yaakov will not be embarrassed and his face will not be white when he sees his children. Okay. Yiper oisa yiladav. So that's something we spoke about. You remember those prakim over there talk about going down to Mitzrayim and going down to Mitzrayim without asking Hashem, as Yosef did and maybe the brothers did, and taking refuge in Mitzrayim. And it talks about the Shalom, the true Shalom, we'll get to that soon, is the Shalom of Hashem. And there it says that, when Yaakov won't be embarrassed when his family is reunited. So, okay. Now going back to Tehillim there, Kuf Chav Zayin and Kuf Chav Ches. Kuf Chav Zayin ends Lo Yevoishu Ki Dabros Oivim Bashar when you have a lot of the Bnei Hanurim. So remember the point. What does it say in Yeshaya? When his whole family is back together. And in Kuf Chav Ches, again it talks about family and Shalom. Urei Vonim Levanecha Shalom Al Yisrael. So you see what it says in Yeshaya that Yaakov is no longer embarrassed, which in Tehillim is not embarrassed to face the enemy, when he has his whole family with him. In Tehillim it says, when you have a lot of the Bnei Hanurim, and Urevonim Levanecha Shalom Al Yisrael, when you see sons to your sons, that's Shalom Al Yisrael. That's when you get the real Shalom, the Shalom for Yisrael. Remember this Shloim Paroi, which is the one that Yosef originally was underwriting. When is your Shalom Al Yisrael? Urevonim Levanecha. What's this thing about Urevonim Levanecha? Because Yaakov comes to Mitzrayim and he says to Yosef, I didn't expect to see you. V'hine hera oisi alakim. So that's when there's Shalom Al Yisrael. Okay? Because, let's expand this a little bit. We start at the beginning of Vayeshev, we're looking for Shalom. Shalom Achecha, Shalom Atzayin. But now Yosef subverts that by offering Shalom Parei. That's not Shalom Yisrael, that's Shalom Parei, that's Shalom Malchus. We only get to the Shalom Yisrael, the true Shalom, when Yaakov is back and reunited with all his children. So basically, there's all these paths that Shalom take. There's Yosef's path in the beginning of Vayeshev. There's the brothers there who won't speak falsely. Then there's when Yosef talks about Shalom Parei. And then there's the brothers will talk Shalom like Vigash, but say it deceptively. So what's happening in a deeper way is basically these parashas are about dealing with the issue of Shalom, which is the arch word, the arch idea that anchors everything else, and all the various ways that it can be subverted or misapplied, whatever. Fine. And going back to Yeshaya now. Remember in Perek Chav Tes where it said Yaakov is not embarrassed when his family is reunited. So there I want you to look at Perek Chav Ches, Perek Chav Zayin, pasuk Hey. Oy yachazek b'ma'uzi ya'asa shalom li shalom ya'asa li. So there's the strength of Hashem that makes shalom for me. And the next pasuk is Haba'im Yashish Yaakov, those who come down to Mitzrayim and take root. This is the after, I think, of Chumash, coming down to Mitzrayim and taking root. Yeah. So there it talks about that the ma'oz of Hashem is shalom, and this contrasts to Perek Lamed Pasuk Gimel, where it says v'hoyolachem ma'oz paroi levoishes. So the ma'oz of Hashem is shalom. The ma'oz paroi is levoishes, and there in Perek Lamed it decries those who go down to Mitzrayim without asking Hashem. So Yosef precipitated the descent to Mitzrayim without the Pi Hashem. Eventually, when Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim, Hashem appeared to him and said, go. But till then, everything was happening without the Pi Hashem. And that's taking strength in Paroi, guaranteeing Shalom Paroi. And as Shaya says, the Mo'ez Paroi is actually Boishes. You really need the Mo'ez of Hashem, which is the true Shalom. So the Shalom Paroi is taking us away from Shalom HaYisrael, which is when you Lo Yevoishu Ki Daber Bashar, because the Mo'ez Paroi is actually Boishes. Okay. Fine. So again, as we said, when is there Shalom Al Yisrael? Urevonim Levanecha. And I want to add one thing about that seeing. So Yaakov says, I didn't expect to see you, and now I even to see your children. And as we mentioned earlier, he doesn't believe the brothers when they tell him that Yosef is alive. Because all of a sudden everyone is lying, right? This is the Shalom that's Svashek or Lashon Amiyah. This is not the good Shalom. And there it says in Parshas Vayigash, Perek Mem Hey Pasuk Chof Zayin. So first Yaakov didn't believe them, and then it says Vayidabru Elav as Kol Divrei Yosef Asher Diber Alim. So first we have Vayidabru Divrei Yosef Asher Diber. So this is like they're saying, no. This is not our Shalom, which is Sfasar Miyah and Lashon Sheker. This is Divrei Yosef. Vayar Eso Agolas, and he saw something, and then Batachi. So Urei Vonim Levanecha Shalom HaYisrael is associated with Yosef. That once Yaakov sees something, that's when he's willing to accept the Devarim, the Divrei Yosef Asher Diber, that they were medaber to him as being the real Davar, the real Shalom. Okay. Now, as we said before, why did he ask him if I was still alive? Because he realized that they make things up for Shalom purposes. And what does the pasuk say? They couldn't answer because they were nivhal. So this being nivhal, yevoishu v'yabalu. It's like busha, the inability to speak. Remember, it says over there in Kof Chof Zayin, lo yevoishu ki dabru zayv mashar. Busha causes the person to not be able to say what he believes, what he has conviction of. So they couldn't speak. They were nivhal, and they were had, which is associated with Boishes. This inability to speak brings us to Micha Peragim. We spoke about this a lot, where the false prophets who call for Shalom, but then declare war if someone doesn't want to give them food. So that's like Yosef, and they don't trust him for the food he's dreaming about, and they declare war against him. And therefore the pasuk says, it's going to become dark for you from the ability to see the prophecies, and you'll be embarrassed. Ki ein ma'ale uboishu hachayzim. Oh, that's another one. Uboishu, the seers will be embarrassed. Ki ein ma'ane elokim, because there's no response from Hashem. So when it says the brothers couldn't respond, they lost the ability to speak clearly because they lost the ability to see clearly. When they picked up their eyes and saw the Archas Yishmael, did not misunderstood it, as we discussed numerous times, and therefore they were Baishu. And Yaakov is Lo Yevoish Yaakov, and Lo Yevoishu Ki Yadabru. They'll be able to speak clearly when they reclaim the word of Hashem, which is Shalom, right? Because remember what it says in Micha, it says they declare Shalom, and they don't really mean it, because they say Shalom, but then as soon as someone doesn't help them, they declare Muhammad. So that means they don't really interested in Shalom. So when they have Shalom HaYisrael, the true Shalom, when it's Lo Yevoish, when the word of Hashem returns. Okay? So basically that's what I'm saying, that the beginning of Vayigash is the Svashek and Lashon Amiyah. It's what the brothers originally did not do, but now Yehud is engaged in that. And this is a step towards, but not achieving Shalom HaYisrael, which is only when it's only when Yaakov is reunited and gets the dvarim of Yosef, who's the only one who is authentic. That's what it seems. While the brothers are engaged in first not speaking shalom, but then at best they speak shalom and don't mean it. So which is like the chitze giba shnunim, ends up harming everyone.